I see he's not here. To talk for mamash 10 minutes about Biur Perot Shvi'it. So we'll start that and then we'll talk about the Sukkot, even though I see Harold isn't here. Here's Harold. Just a minute, let's wait for him. Okay, so as I said, Harold asked last time that we will discuss the Biur Perot Shvi'it that we didn't discuss in the last shiur. Harold, am I correct? Okay, so we'll start that and then we'll talk about what our shiur today. Okay, so generally when we talk about Biur Perot Shvi'it, it's something that in our days, it's not as practical as in the past. What is this mitzvah? So the pasuk says, "V'ayta shavat haaretz lachem leochla, lecha ve'la'avdecha ve'la'amatcha, ve'lischicha ve'letoshavcha agarim imach ve'livhimtecha, ve'lachaya asher be'artzecha tiyeh chol tevuata le'echol," meaning, you should eat the produce, you and your slave, etc., and the animals. So the Midrash says in Torat Kohanim and Vayikra, "Mekish behema lechaya." כל זמן שחיה אוכלת בשדה, בהמה אוכלת בבית. כלל החיה שבשדה, כלל לבהמתך שבבית, meaning, בהמה and חיה are written together. When the animals can eat the produce in the field, so your animal in the house that you're feeding, it can eat in the house. But once the produce is no more outside in the field because it's already finished, meaning you have fruit for X amount of months on the trees, after a few months, that's it. Nothing stays. Whatever there is falls to the ground. I don't know, birds eat it and insects eat it. We know, the most of the fruit trees are not 12 months with the fruit on them. So from the time there is nothing for the animal to eat, meaning the produce is not available in the field, so meaning you stopped giving it to your animal, but the main issue is you are not allowed to eat it, meaning every produce, when the time comes, we'll discuss in a minute, what does it mean? When is this time? But let's say for grapes, the Mishnah says the time is, the Gemara says the time is Pesach. So once Pesach, after Shemitah comes, you are not allowed to give it to your animal in the house, and you are not allowed to eat it. So what do you do with it? So you do Biur Perot Shvi'it, and we'll discuss in a minute how do you do it. You know what? Let's do it already now. How do you do it? The Rambam says, if you have more produce than a week's produce for your family, you have to burn it. Meaning, you're not allowed to have it. The Rambam says, if you read what he means that a person will do, let's say you have a lot of grapes, what the Rambam wants you to do is give it out to people. Give it out to people. Whatever you have, give out to people, and you can leave for yourself only a week's produce. And if you have more, so you're not allowed, you have to burn it. That's what the Rambam says. The Ramban, and that's the halacha l'maaseh, you can do a hefker, meaning it's not yours, but you can declare it hefker, and then you can take it back. And on Erev Pesach, I don't know if you remember 7 years ago, but on this Erev Pesach, people that will have this, you see? This is grape juice. Otzar Beitin Kedushat Shvi'it grape juice. It says here Otzar Beitin, I don't know if you can see. So this grape juice, if one has a lot on Erev Pesach, so he has to take the boxes he has, to take it out, to put the boxes there, to ask 3 people to come, and he declares it hefker, and he leaves it there. after a few minutes, if they don't take it or somebody else doesn't take it, he can bring it back into his house. And that's what practically we do with Biur Perot Shvi'it. So today it's something I would say more symbolic. And just remember to choose your friends. Because if Harold has 2 boxes of grape juice and he puts it out, and one of his friends, after he declares it hefker, so his friend comes and takes it. He takes it. Halachically, is he allowed to take it? Of course, because it's hefker. That's why the rabbis say, take 3 of your ohavim, people that love you, that won't do such a thing for you, to you. But halachically, of course, they're allowed to take it. So that's what practically we do with Shemitah Podos that we have. Now, what Shemitah Podos we usually have? Because if you have now, I don't know, peaches, oranges, they won't stay for such a long time. What kinds of fruit can store for a long period of time? So here I wrote the basic list. This, as I said, grape juice, olive oil. I have here special Otzar Beit Din olive oil I bought from a farmer that is an English speaker farmer from Rosh Pina that grew at Otzar Beit Din. So we wanted to help him, to support him, because the regular years he couldn't sell, he had problem with selling. So we said, okay, you know, he's a farmer, he doesn't do it for a living, he's a technical writer or high-tech person, but he does it for love. So we helped him, and Baruch Hashem, most of his olive oil, it's organic olive oil, was sold. And when the time will come on Shavuot for olives, we will have to declare hefker for the olive oil or olives we have. Jam as well. If somebody makes at home jam from Shemitah Produce, so he has to declare it hefker when the time comes. And dry fruit, pickled vegetables, frozen cake, and ice cream. These are the practical things that can store for a long time. Okay, so this is the olive oil of Tzvi. And we have the dates. Each fruit has a different date. You see, apples, the biur time is late Tevet. Apricot already it was. Avocado only in Av, the end of the year, because it's a long time. Blueberries, April, etc. So each polis in its time. The Mishnah says that dates till Purim, olives till Shavuot, grapes till Pesach, and figs till Chanukah. Those were the common food, but of course, every food in its time, and you have it on the website, these lists. Okay. Now I want to say what I was asked many times. Let's say a scenario, we don't rely on heter mechira. When is the time we can go back to the regular supermarket and buy fruits and vegetables? When is the time that Shemitah, let's say, ends? Because we know that many of the vegetables now were planted on Shemitah. So for that, we have here a list. And on this, you see each item, each fruit or each vegetable, when is the time? Basically, most vegetables after Chanukah, you're allowed to buy, even in a place that doesn't have a Shemitah solution that you rely on, because after Chanukah, Chazal allowed to buy the vegetables. Some vegetables that grow quicker. Chazal said that, let's say, cucumber takes it 6 weeks until the first produce. So in mid-Cheshvan, you can buy already all cucumbers because the first new cucumbers came. For Sfichin on the 8th year, you don't have to be sure that this item was planted after Shemitah. It's enough for you to know that there are items from this species in the market that are from the 8th year to approve that everything would be allowed, unless, of course, you know this was planted on Shemitah. So then you shouldn't. But if you don't know, and that's usually the situation, so you can rely on these lists. So you see Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan lettuce, Mid Cheshvan basil, coriander kusbara, radish, squash, kale, dill, strawberries, Rosh Chodesh Kislev, and from Chanukah, most of the vegetables. And we're talking about fruits, so again, each fruit, when is the time that the new fruit will come? Nectarine and peach and Shvat, blueberries and Tevet, figs and Pesach. Midiyar, many of these, apple, Anna, and Midiyar, Mid Tammuz, other apples, avocado only, and Av will have the new ones, etc., etc. So the list is here. And products with no Shemitah concerns, I was asked about wheat. Could there be wheat of, let's say, heter mechira wheat? Is there such a thing? So after a long research, the answer is basically almost none, because all of the big mills, they work with the badatzim, they won't allow heter mechira, and even in a regular year, about 90% of our flour or the wheat comes from import. Israel doesn't go a lot, so there's no practical problem with wheat during the whole Shemitah and now, same as rice, which is imported, and the things here are on the list. Okay, questions?
So
Questions?
So basically, a lot of the fruit that you might buy this year, a lot of those fruits are still going to be subject to Shemitah, and you had a bunch of them that were listed in Elul and Rosh Hashanah. So basically, you're talking about, like, for a lot of the common fruit, like the whole year. You have
Correct. I'm reminding you, last year, meaning on Shemitah year, you're starting to worry about them only on August, September. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Right.
Because the first avocados come around September, October. So it's true for Shemitah, but then you have to take another year till the end of the year. So correct. More questions? Okay. Now I wanted to talk to you about, I don't know if it's a scandal, but issue that was brought up this Sukkot, and this is about Sukkot and buildings. And it started from a post of a rabbi, Rabbi Dr. Ido Fechter. He was a community rabbi in Netanya, a young Israel community. He writes in Shabbaton. He's considered to be a liberal rabbi, very liberal rabbi, I would say. And he wrote a post on Facebook that started a long discussion. And it's in Hebrew. I'll just present it, and then you can I'll translate while I'm reading. Okay, steps in the dark. This is what I remember from Sukkot. We lived in the second and last floor in a small apartment building. Mirpeset Sukkah, a Sukkah porch. Nobody heard then. And like all the religious families in the neighborhood, we built a Sukkah downstairs. The Sukkot holiday for me was a holiday of steps. Whatever the food, the plates, the water for the tilat yadayim, the napkins my mother gave to us kids, and we all had to take it down 2 floors, usually in the dark, making sure not to fall, not to slip, but always when we came down with all the food, what happened? We forgot something. A salt, the knife, a water, and somebody had to go up in the dark and bring it. Years passed, and I'm a father for 4 kids. I live in Netanya in an apartment building, 2nd floor, which is 3rd floor, because it's 3 floor steps. No sukkah porch. And on the bottom, there wasn't enough room to build a private sukkah. Why not? Because we're 16 floors, 4 apartments in a floor. How much is it? 56 apartments, a lot of religious people. So the Vad Bayit built one big sukkah for everyone. The first holiday, I tried to do to my kids what I remembered. We put the food and we told them to go up, but it didn't work. The darkness in my corridor was darkness than what I remember as a kid. to wait 10 minutes for a Shabbos elevator with a hot plate in your head. Not relevant. So we went down, but when we went down to the sukkah, we found out that somebody else is there. Another family was there, and we didn't have room. The rest of the meals we did in the sukkah of the synagogue or by friends. The problem Rav Fechter keeps on is not only mine. Dozens of families in the neighborhood didn't have a way to properly fulfill Sukkot. When you have 30 floors, you can't give mirpeset sukkah for each apartment. The room on the bottom of the building is not enough for every apartment to have a sukkah. And if you don't have a penthouse or something like that, so you have to go 5, 10, 20 floors each time to go up and down. And I'm not talking about sleeping or other things in the sukkah. We have to say, he writes, the sukkah and its laws are not so adjust to the way of building it nowadays. We go building up, and we have more and more buildings in big cities and in small cities, towns in the periphery. Mirpeset sukkah is something that is not so common. How do we take the hilchot sukkah to our days? When you learn Masechet Sukkah, it seems like building sukkah is easy. You take a few things, psolet goren v'yekev, all kinds of branches that are thrown somewhere, and put it as a schach, and that's it. You had enough of nature, you had enough of sky, but today we don't have it. You don't have branches and leftover trees in the streets, and to live in a private house is luxus that is only for rich people. And I'm sure, that's what he writes, that when Chazal talked about Hilchot Sukkah, they didn't even think that people would live tens of meters above ground, and 10 meters, 20 amah was for them, very high, but more than that, maybe it's time to make Sukkot that are under the mirpeset kosher, even though they are under another mirpeset, another porch. Yes, I know it's against the basic halacha, but what's the alternative? That dozens and thousands of people won't build a sukkah and won't feel what it means to sit under the schach. I know many families that said, okay, we're not building a sukkah, we're not keeping sukkot because of that. Is the price worth it? When I was in Netanya, I was makpid to build a sukkah in the porch, which of course the porch had a roof, or there was a porch above it. Halachically, it was not kosher, and I told it to my kids and community members. But it was important for me to build, to give my kids an atmosphere of Sukkot. Sometimes we even slept on it. I didn't have a choice. And many years lately, I get a lot of questions about it. I don't know of any halachic source that will say, is it kosher? Maybe it's the time that we will write this source. This is what he wrote. Wow. Let's see, maybe two people. What do you say? Somebody wants, before I have a lot to say, but if somebody has his feelings, what do you say about it? Phil?
Yeah.
Yeah, you wanted to say something?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think, who wrote that? A rabbi?
A rabbi, yes.
Sounds like a mensch. It's realistic, because this is what happens. And the whole business, you made an excellent point that nowadays, I watched buildings being built in our neighborhood. They don't have facilities for a sukkah. There's overhang and there's something else. So what happens? I would say when there were chachamim around, they would have found the solution and realized that if there's a difference of the distance of the roof of one sukkah or one building from another, and they'll find that, because sukkah is really a thank you to Hashem for his goodness to us. It's not really about looking at the sky and the measurements and so on. And this is where I think in modern times, we have a lot of tourists.
Okay, thank you, Phil. I totally disagree with you, but I'll explain in a minute why. I agree with you 100% and disagree with you. I'll explain in a minute why, okay?
I'm not offended. I know you have to say that. It's the party line, but I like to hear it.
Okay. Yes, who else?
This is Jacques. Look, I grew up in the late 40s and 50s in Manhattan. I lived on the 5th floor of a 12-story building. The only sukkah we had was in the shul. And what we did is we made kiddush, hamotzi, and then we went home. Everybody in the community. It's only after the children like myself went to yeshiva and came back that we started insisting on eating. So for him to right away say that I'm going to make a heter for a sukkah that's covered shows that he hasn't had the experience in the Golah to maybe come up with some psharot.
I didn't understand, but from the beginning, I wanted to, but what you said at the beginning, that people didn't eat in the sukkah. No, that's what you said.
We made kiddush, and we made during the week we did not eat in the sukkah. It's only after in the 60s when we started coming back from yeshiva that the children that we started eating during the week. But on the Chagim, there wasn't any room for the whole community, so we made kiddush and then hamotzi, benched, and then went home and we ate. So there could be psharot. The right way to say I'm going to be matir a sukkah under a roof is like not looking for middle grounds.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you. Who else? Yes, Harold.
Okay. I don't know the language of the Gemara, but back then, it would seem to me that what they're concerned about or what the prohibition would have been was to build a sukkah under a tree. Because I don't imagine that they had that many buildings where there were overhangs or mirpasot above. So the whole concept of building a sukkah where there's nothing above it, well, what could there be above it? Well, in times of Chazal, you're talking about a tree. And the question then could be asked, okay, we're not talking about building a sukkah under a tree. We're talking about building it under a mirpeset, which is maybe a totally different situation. And therefore, one might argue that this prohibition may not be so applicable. I just throw that out.
But
possible.
I thought you're saying exactly the opposite. If a sukkah under a tree, Chazal said for sure you can. So under a different house or mirpeset, alachat kava v'chava. That's what I thought you're saying. But okay, I hear what you're saying.
You could argue either way, or you could say, no, a mirpeset above me is not anything like a tree. It's not a natural phenomenon. It's not part of God's earth. That therefore it is so much different than what Chazal had in mind that one could say that the prohibition would not apply to such a structure.
Okay, I have to correct you, Harold. The Gemara does talk about a sukkah, building a sukkah in the house and building a sukkah under a sukkah. So there is a mention of sukkah and something above it, which is not natural, but okay.
Okay, well, I said I didn't know the language of the Gemara, but
yes.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Okay, one or two others?
Throw it out.
Somebody else? Okay. So first of all, I want to share with you what Rav Bazak wrote about it. Before we talk about the halachic things, Rav Amnon Bazak from Har Etzion, which is not, I would say, the most, is considered pretty liberal rabbi, I would say. And he said he doesn't like it because of three main reasons. He said he wrote a book, Nitzchuni Banai, and at the end of the book, he talked about the differences between halachic attitude to a reform attitude when you have issues that the Mitzvah changed, that the reality changed, and we want to come. The rabbis need to come and see how and how we change the halacha because the reality changed. So he said three things. One thing is what they use. The halachic way is to use halachic sources, to distinguish between the Oraita and the Rabbanan, and to see if you have Shat Adchak, to see if you have Rishonim that maybe were not Paskin, and you can use them, to look into the earlier sources and to discuss them. The Reform vision doesn't see itself obligated to the halacha, and it's enough that you want to change that you can change. So the first thing he says, and I agree with him, saying I want to change, and even though I don't find any source, just saying I want to change, that maybe will be enough. That's something which is not correct. And I would say sometimes you have the Rambam writes that a woman shouldn't leave her house more than once or twice a month. That's what the Rambam writes. And today, even Haredi women go out. Why? Because the situation changed. But when the Rambam writes it, it's not like a psak halacha. And even if it's a guidance, it's not something which is built in, I would say, in the fundamental structures of the halacha. When you talk about sukkah, what's the main of the sukkah? The schach. The schach that is under the sky. It's not that the schach is for shade. It's between the sun and the person in the sukkah. It's not something, small detail when you talk about Hilchot Sukkah. The schach under the sky, under the sun, that's the main thing, maybe of Sukkot. So to asking for a change in something which is maybe the main halacha, when you talk about Sukkot, the schach is problematic. A second issue is the motivation. We've seen many times in the generation that the rabbis, when there was a problem, a severe problem, they try to look for a solution. But the question is the mitzvot, is what happens, is it really a big problem? Meaning, I'll explain. I was a rabbi in Poland. And in Poland, we had a very weak community. And as Jack said, nobody had Sukkot in his house. They all lived in building. To build no sukkah porch and to build in the courtyard of the building is not relevant when you're in Chutz La'aretz usually. So almost everyone, besides a few people that had private houses in the outskirts of the city of Warsaw, everybody didn't have a sukkah. Now, first of all, because it was only us and Chabad, and I asked the Chabad rabbi who came and who not, I knew what Jews come to eat in the sukkah and Chag and who didn't come. Meaning, if he didn't come to us or to Chabad, he didn't eat in the sukkah. He didn't fulfill the mitzvah of, let's say, the first night eating in a sukkah or a Shabbat, etc. Lechem Mishneh, etc. So I do. But as Jack said, the basic halacha says you have to do kiddush and to eat bread in the sukkah. But achilat aray, you're not allowed. You can eat out of the sukkah. What defines achilat aray, what not? A long discussion. But according to most poskim, if you eat mezonot, you should eat it in the sukkah. So if you have a meal without mezonot, meaning you eat bread, you eat a meal, you eat bread, you do amotzi and then birkat hamazon, and then you go home to eat the chicken and soup, etc. That's things that don't require sukkah. So of course, the ideal is to have a whole Shabbat Chag meal, but that's a solution. That's from the one side. On the other side, we know that Jews were meshuganis about Sukkot. We have stories. We know people for Sukkot, they knew it was difficult for them, and they kept the mitzvah. So saying now it's difficult for me to go down the 2.5 floors. So because of that, let's change all of Ilchot Sukkah. Is it really the situation is so bad? I'm leaving this as a question. In a few minutes, I will give, I think, some solutions that were given to this problem, because it is a problem. But as I would want to say, there are solutions. Of course, you have to think about it. You have to prepare in advance. Maybe you have to change the way of building, but there are solutions for me as an individual and for the community to think of, and not to do the easy way out and just to change the halacha. The third thing is who is allowed to do changes. And again, we're talking about Rav Bazak from Har Etzion, considerably a liberal rabbi, not someone from, I don't know, Chardali, what's called, from Har Amor that change. You can't change anything. And he says, who can change? You need the big rabbis. The big rabbis that have big shoulders, and they are the ones that need to lead this, and we can go after them. But the people many times that started all kinds of changes are not big and known rabbis. And then for us, normal people, to go according to, rabbis that are not known as the first or second row of rabbis is problematic. And fourth thing he said, again, you have to discuss halachically. I know I work in Machon Torah Ve'aretz, and all kinds of changes and discussions, and Machon Tzomit is dealing with a lot of things. You have Tchumin, every year you have 30 articles about new things and changes. Okay, you write an article, halachic, somebody else argues, you give it to big rabbis, you discuss it, but just to say in Facebook, okay, let's change it, it's not something you do. And he says, a post like this goes according to me as a liberal rabbi that thinks that sometimes the halacha should change. Why? Because people see this post and said, oh, all these rabbis want to change everything. And then even sometimes when there are things that should be changed, like Rav Bazak says, everybody go against me. They say, you start with a small change, but look, your friends, where do they go to? They change everything. So he says, as a liberal rabbi, this is very problematic for me. Okay, this is one thing. Now I want to see, maybe he's right. And let's do the first source, the Gemara in Sukkah. The Gemara in Sukkah, can you see it? The Bavli Sukkah here, down here. Harold, can you see it? Make it bigger.
Too small.
Harold, can you see it?
Yeah, that's good.
Yes, okay. The Gemara in Sukkah says as follows: the arba minim kmushim, ksherim, yeveshim, psulim. If they are totally dry, yavesh, so they're pasul for arba minim. But if it's kamush, meaning it's dry but not 100% dry, it's on the way, but it's not 100%. It's still kosher. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, af yeveshim ksherim. Even if it's totally dry, the arba minim, it's kosher. ואמר רבי יהודה, מעשה בבני כרכין שהיו מורישים את לולביהם לבני בניהם. A story about בני כרכין. Somewhere, people, Jews and faraway places that probably didn't get new lulavim every year. So they gave their lulavim to their grandchildren. You understand what he says? The same lulav, not only I used it year after year, but sometimes we left it to our grandchildren, meaning decades, with the same lulav. A lulav after decades is 100% dry, and they did it. We know in brackets that till we see in the Middle Ages that in Europe to get arba minim was very, very difficult. To get the etrogim that came from the Mediterranean, from Italy, from the Nice, the Riviera, from Cyprus, etc. Here the etrogim grow. Etrogim can't grow in Europe, as we know. And the lulavim as well. The palm trees don't go in cold places. So you had to send the etrogim and lulavim from here, from Israel, Italy, etc., till Europe. That's a long way, and we see stories that the common practice was one set for a community. You had one arba minim set, one etrog, one lulav for the community, and the rabbi shook, and then each person in the synagogue shook, and that's it. You gave it back. And if you gave it to your kid accidentally and it fell to the floor, that's it. You don't have kosher arba minim. So we know that it was a situation, practical situation that happened. So Rabbi Yehuda says, you see, if they gave the lulavim to the grandchildren, so it means lulav yavesh kasher. Amru lo chachamim misham raya en shat adchak raya. You can't bring a raya from shat adchak. There, what can they do? They couldn't get lulavim every year, but you can't learn from here to other places. Now, so what do Chachamim say? Is lulav yavesh kosher or not kosher? It sounds like, so there's a machloket rishonim. The Tosfot says that if it's shat adchak, so b'diavad, you can use kosher lulavim. But if it's not shat adchak, you're not allowed. And that's what many Rishonim say, that because Yavesh is kind of a hadar, it's supposed to be beautiful. Yes, arba minim, hadar is supposed to be good looking. So Rav Soloveitchik writes, because hadar, that it should be look nice. The arba minim is from the Torah. Hadar is, I would say, is considered. You have to see what's the alternative. If the dry one is hadar because you have some nothing else, so then you're allowed to use it and it's kosher. That's what Rav Soloveitchik says, and according to the Rambam. The Ravid, I didn't bring it here, the Ravid says no. The Ravid says, even in Bnei Krachim, they didn't say a bracha. It wasn't kosher. Lulav yavesh is not kosher. But what do we see here? They took arba minim even though they were not kosher. Why not? Why did they do it? Sorry. Probably that they won't forget. The Rabbi said they won't forget what arba minim is. But it wasn't kosher arba minim. That's what the Rabbi says. So from here we see a situation that it's not kosher, but still we do it because we have no other possibility. So at least to give the people some sort of feeling. The Ravid asks, wait, what happens if I don't have an etrog? I have only a lemon. Does the same apply there? Meaning, I have hadas, lulav, and arava, but no etrogim. And I say, okay, I want to give the feeling of the mitzvah to myself and my kids. Can I take it less instead of an etrog? The Gemara asks, parish verimon, a pomegranate instead of an etrog. So the Gemara says no, that you're not allowed. It's better don't fulfill the mitzvah, don't take anything, and don't do don't do a joke or a performance of something close to the mitzvah, but not the mitzvah itself. Why not? What's the difference? So the Ravid says, hi, there's a big difference. Lulav yavesh, if you would have kosher lulav, nobody will take a dry lulav. So even if you're telling your grandchildren, listen, this is kosher, even though it's not kosher, we can do it, but they won't think that it's something ideal. And if they will have a different situation, they will change and take the dry lulavim. But if you take a pomegranate instead of an etrog, what will happen in 10 years? People would say, okay, that's arba minim. So as the Ravid says, nafik mimenu churva, will come from it a mistake. That people will think that's the arba minim. So that's why the Ravid says, lulav yavesh, even though it's pasul, you're allowed to take, but something else instead of etrog, you're not allowed to take. Okay. Now let's talk about a few answers. And before that, I want to ask about Yerushalayim. One of the discussions of the rabbis, somebody said, just a minute. When everybody come to Yerushalayim when the Bet HaMikdash is built, tens of thousands, 100,000 people, the second temple, I don't know, third temple, millions of people will come to Yerushalayim. Where will they have Sukkot for everyone? What will they do? What Sukkot will they use in Bet HaMikdash with all of the Olei Regel coming to Yerushalayim? So one rabbi said, you know what Sukkot they will build? Like the Kikar Safra Sukkah. You know the Kikar Safra in Yerushalayim, next to the city, next to the area? They have their huge sukkah. I think it's for hundreds of people. And somebody said the city will build on every park, on every, I don't know, parking lot. They will build huge sukkot, communal sukkot, and people will sleep there, people will eat there, etc. That's what people will do. And going back to the buildings, that's maybe what a building should do. If you live in a building of 70 people, 70 apartments, so build a big sukkah on the bottom, maybe on the grass, maybe there, but think about it in advance and build something that will be enough for everybody together. You want a private sukkah? What can you do? But at least you can be in a sukkah, you can be there, you can fulfill the mitzvah, you can eat. Okay, so to sing Shabbat songs with the other families as well, it's more difficult maybe, but you can do it. So that's one solution that was brought as a solution for the buildings. And if I'm going back to Yerushalayim, the Meshech Chochmah says, you know what? No Sukkot in Yerushalayim. Why not? Because Olei Regalim are pturim from Holchei Drachim. Let's see it. The Meshech Chochmah says, וחגותם אותו חג להשם 7 ימים, לא כתב כאן בסוכות תשבו, כמו שכתב מצות שיאכל בפסח ובראש שנה יום תרועה יהיה לכם, משום, ובחג היו צריכים כולם להיראות לפני השם. And the חג הסוכות, everybody would have to go to ירושלים, to be seen before השם, שילה, אורן בית תל אביב, בית המקדש, וכי יעלו כולם, אז פטורים, מדין הולכי דרכים, ומשום מצטער, ופטורים מסוכה, when everybody will go to ירושלים, they have the din on הולכי דרכים, that they're פטור from סוכה. And because of mitzvah, that's why, whatever. That's what he says. So he says in Yerushalayim, you were patur. I saw Tosefta that I didn't exactly understand. The Tosefta says that Anshe Yerushalayim would put משלשלים מיטותיהם בחלונות שגבוהים 10 טפחים, ומסככים על גבם וישנים תחתיהם. I didn't exactly understand. They put their beds under or inside, maybe, inside windows that were more than 10 tfachim, and they would put schach and sleep. I don't really understand what exactly happened here, but they put their beds in an unusual place, put like a bit of schach above it, and slept there. Meaning, you can build even a strange sukkah, I would say. I'll give you an example. I remember I was in the army and I was in a course in Bislach. It's an army base next to Yerucham. And we were there, so there was a sukkah on the base, and we slept in the sukkah. We were Talmidei Yeshivot, so we asked in advance, etc. So we slept and ate in the sukkah in the army base. But every day, 2 soldiers had to go outside to a place next to where the shooting range, the mitvachim were, and to guard them. You went there 2 days for 24 hours, you took with you food, and you were there. And me and my friend, we were sent there, and on Sukkot, and we said, oh no, what are we going to do? For 24 hours, okay, so we won't eat bread, so we'll eat only things that are not mezonot. Okay. We came there, and I remember till this day, the Bnei Yeshivot that were before me, they found like 3 poles. They stuck the 3 poles. They put like ropes around two of the sides, which was like halachically shalosh fanot, ropes they did a lavud, and they put above it all kinds of like bushes they cut, and you had a kosher sukkah. Now you can barely sit in it, two people, you can barely sit there, but you had a kosher sukkah, meaning you can do it. You can do it. So I brought this strange sukkah in order to show you this. Can you see this? Can you see this? Somebody thought of a solution. This is a one-man's sukkah. You attach it outside of the porch somehow, and you have a mitzvah. You sit in the mitzvah. I assume that if you have a family, so the women and little kids sit inside the house, yes, and you sit in here, but it's a way to fulfill sukkah. Now, this is a bit strange. Look at this. This is a person in Moscow. This Jew in Moscow, he wanted to live in a sukkah. I assume he's a Chabadnik, and he got an engineer's permission for this. To build this thing, and in a minute you'll see, look at it. You see here? This is the sukkah. This is a picture from outside. This is a picture from inside. That he can sleep. No, he didn't say no. Sleeping is, I think, too complicated, but he got an engineer's permission and he can eat and sleep there. This is very nice, but this is only for Meshuganis. Crazy, 1-2 people can do it. This is not for the general population, all these tricks, and we need to find a proper solution for these people. And let's talk about other solutions. What other solutions we can do? So the main solution is a sukkah porch. I live in Petach Tikva. We have a neighborhood called Hadar Ganim, a new neighborhood, which is mainly a religious families. You have buildings between, I would say, 10 and 20 floors. And because it's for religious people, the buildings have 12 floors. You have, for every apartment, you have a sukkah porch. Even in the 11th floor, you have a sukkah porch. How can you do it? You have a porch, and I don't know, in Yerushalayim, I'm sure you saw it. You have a porch, which is, I don't know, 2 meters on 3 meters, and you have one, let's say, 1 meter and 2 meters of the porch, which doesn't have the porch above it. And they build it in a way which is complicated for the adrichalim, the people to prepare it, how to do it. But you can do it, I think. Architects, thank you. I think somebody said till 20 floors, you can have for every apartment a sukkah floor if you have sukkah porches on 4 sides of the building. And if you do it only on 3 sides, because usually on the chazit, on the front of the building, usually you want it to be aesthetic and nice, not these sukkah porches. So if you have from 3 sides of the buildings, I think he said till 12, 15 floors, with 4 apartments in a floor, you can have sukkah porches for everyone. So the advantage here, we're in Medina, the state of the Jews, that we as a society can think, just a minute, we're building new buildings, let's organize them in a way that religious people can probably live there and have a mirpeset sukkah. Not only in the religious neighborhoods, even in non-religious neighborhoods, you're building now, they build in Tel Aviv between 40 and 50 in the Bavli, between 40 and 50 floors. I saw it here. I think 11 buildings. I think they said 11,000 people. 18 buildings, 2,600 apartments, 11,000 people in Tel Aviv. They're now building it. So just a minute. Let's do that. Every kablan that builds this building, let's say at least 20% of the apartments with a sukkah porch. That's something, could be done. So, and you can do such a thing. And more than that, we had somebody from Machon Tzomet, and he said, "Oi, it's such a shame that Rav Fechter didn't write this post a year ago, and he wrote it only this year." And we have like a forum of rabbis in the email, like everybody, what? Listen, half a year ago, I was sitting with somebody from Misrad HaShikun, and we started to give solutions for new buildings for religious people. We wanted that the government, when every new apartment building that is built, they will have all kinds of criteria you have to have. Let's say you have to have now the new buildings, hachana le'malit Shabbat. One of the elevators have to have the infrastructure that, just to change it to a Shabbat elevator. And that's what you do today. The new buildings, if there's more than one elevator, one has an infrastructure for Malit Shabbat. Second thing, garbage. Today in the new buildings, you saw the garbage, and the garbage, when it goes down, it like all kinds of, it weighs it, and then it tells the garbage company when it's full and to come and take it. And water pumps going up. A lot of problems, technology and halacha and Shabbat, we have in new buildings. And they sat, and in the new buildings, at least most of the problems were solved. But he said, but this, we didn't think about it. We didn't think that this is one of the things we should ask, that in new buildings, the government would say, hey, give 30% of the apartment to have a sukkah porch. He said, oh, maybe next year's when we'll meet again. But I give it as an example for something, not the individual. I come from a building, what can I do? But as a society, we can think of proper solutions, and this is one good solution.
Rabbi, I have a question. Do you have any daughters?
Yes.
Well, don't educate them, because what's happening is, notwithstanding the halacha, the young women today, including some older ones, would say that they would oppose buying an apartment with that, because notwithstanding the halacha, we all should be sitting under the same. No, I'm not laughing. I'm not joking, because, for example, in that discussion did you have any women? The one about, oh, we should have thought about this or that. I mean, I'm not a flaming feminist, but when you have daughters and when you educate them in places like Lindenbaum or the other yeshiva, modern seminars, you're training women to think equally, and this is going, I think, is regressive. I'm sorry, that's my opinion. Okay,
I'll answer. I'll tell you what I think. First of all, most, at least what I assume, most Orthodox women.
By the way, I'm not arguing halacha. I'm arguing.
Yes. No. I'm saying most women, even that they go to. Both of my sisters went to Lindenbaum Bruya, so I know what you're talking about. But I have to tell you, none of them go 3 times a day for a minyan. And when there's a sukkah and they go for a family, we went to a family thing.
Neither do most men. So let's not get into that argument, please.
Okay. No, so I'll give another example. Again, I understand what you're saying, but most of the women, let's say we went to a tiul, and then there was a sukkah far away, and we said, okay, we have to go to the sukkah. So my sister, which is 100%, she's very feminist. That's it. Very much. She gives doing a Simchat Torah reading for women, etc., etc. When there was an obligation of eating the meal in the sukkah, but it was far away with other people, she said, you know what? You have to go. I'm patur. I don't have to. So I'm giving this, again, I understand what you're saying, and I think it's a problematic situation, and I understand it. I don't have a sukkah porch. When I looked for a house, I looked for a house on first, second floor because of this. Because you want everybody to sit in the sukkah and you want it to be nice. and I like with the neighbors, etc. But if I would be in an apartment building in the 5th floor, and we would have a sukkah porch, so I would sit there, and maybe they will sit there at the beginning and say the bracha, etc. Like you said in the bread and there. Again, I understand what you're saying, and people like that should be extra careful to have the other solution that I'll mention in a minute. Let's keep on because we have 15 minutes. Another solution that I told my community here in Petach Tikva, the solution of Chutz La'aretz. As you said, most Jews, where do they eat their Shabbat meals and Chag meals? In the community sukkah. And if you don't have enough room, so you build enough room. And if not, so the lunch at least, you do 2 shifts. At night, it's a bit more complicated. But or you do a small meal and then you go. Or you eat the bread inside. You do the communal thing, and I think it's something that in Israel we don't have so much, but it's something that if we have neighborhoods like that, so to do it. And every shul needs, when it thinks at the beginning, when they build the shul, where to build the sukkah, and that the sukkah will be big enough. A. B. The Mankal Misrad HaShikun is a religious guy, and he wrote, after Rav Fechter wrote this post, he said, listen, guys, the buildings that we're talking about now, 20 to 50 floors, are not going to be in Tel Aviv. In 30, 40 years, we will have in Yerucham, in Katzrin, in Netivot, in Carmiel, Ma'alot, all these things. You will have the 20, 50 floors buildings because we're going there. What can we do? And what are the solutions? So he wanted to say that in these buildings, when they build the building, they will have a big plot on the bottom of the building that will be meant for sukkah. And that every person that comes, he signs when he buys the apartment that this plot will be for Sukkot, and he can't, even if he's not religious he can't say, hey, I don't want them to build the sukkah there. No, there will be a sukkah for the whole building, a big one, and it's part of the agreement when you sign, when you go into the building. That's what he said. And the other thing he said, parks. Usually when you have these floors, when you have these giant buildings, you have like 4 buildings, and then you have a big park in between them. So there you can think of building a big sukkah for the tenants. You have to see again in advance. You have to have enough room, grass. Yes, no, you have to think about it in advance. But if you do it in advance, so it's much more. It's much easier. It's not like I come now. Oh, what can I do? So that's a second option that the cities, the Matzot Datiyot would build huge sukkot in parks, next to synagogues, and that would be a solution for such people. Okay, now I want to go to the last solution, which is a solution of a porch that there is a porch above it, but the porch above it is more than 20 amah high. And this solution is a discussion between the rabbis. We'll see in a minute. But I think it's a very, very interesting thing. Let's see. Just a minute. Where was this? Okay, just a minute. Let's see.
Can everybody who's not on mute themselves, please?
Okay. So I call this sukkah under a porch, but the porch is more than 20 amah above us. So look what Rav Zion Levi, the rabbi of Panama, he was the Chevruta of Rav Ovadia Yosef. He was the rabbi of Panama for 50 years or something like that. And he wrote as follows, מעיקר הדין, מותר לעשות סוכה מתחת למרפסת הגבוהה למעלה מ-20 אמה. אמנם לכתחילה עדיף לעשותה מתחת כיפת השמיים. מעיקר הדין, the basic halacha, you're allowed to build the sukkah under a porch if the porch is more than 20 amah, 10 meters from the sukkah of from your schach. But lechatchila, it's best to do it under, with nothing above it. Why? Because אין האדם יושב בצל סוכה, אלא בצל דפנות. The Gemara says, we'll see it in a minute, אם כן, בנידון דידן, in our case, that the mirpeset is more than 20 amma, you're not sitting under the shade of the mirpeset, but under the shade of the sukkah. And this is not sukkah under the sukkah that is not allowed. Where did he bring this from? So the Mishnah says, sukkah she'gvoa lemala m-20 amma psula. We know that if the schach is more than 20 amma, 10 meters from the floor of the sukkah, it's pasul. Why? The Gemara asks, Rabbi Zera amar me'acha v'sukkah tהיה צל יומם מחורף, עד 20 אמה האדם יושב בצל סוכה. למעלה מ-20 אמה אין אדם יושב בצל סוכה אלא בצל דפנות. If the schach is up to 10 meters, the shade that you sit, when you sit, the shade comes from the schach. But if it's above 20 amas, so the shade comes not from the schach, but comes from the fanot, from the sides. Again, if the schach is too high, so at least most of the shade that you are benefiting from comes from the side of the sukkah and not from the schach. That's why sukkah למעלה מ-20 אמה פסולה. Rav Tzion Levi said, just a minute. Let's say exactly the same svara, but the opposite. If you say that a schach, which is more than 20 amma, is not relevant for the person sitting under, why? Because there's no shade coming from the schach that is so high. So maybe we can say the opposite. If there's a schach pasul, meaning a house, a mirpeset, a schach pasul above 20 amma, so it doesn't do anything to my sukkah, because the shade that comes there, there's no shade coming from there to my sukkah. The shade comes only from the dfanot or from my schach. So Rav Tzion Levi says, it's allowed. It's best not to, but Ni'ikar Adin, it's allowed. That's Rav Tzion Levi, and a lot of discussions were written about this. And I'm debating how much. Let's see a few more מקורות. The Mishnah says, העושה סוכתו תחת האילן, כאילו עשה בתוך הבית. If you build the sukkah under the tree, it's like in the house, which is פסול. סוכה על גבי סוכה, העליונה כשרה והתחתונה פסולה. Meaning, if you have a sukkah on a sukkah, that you have, so the upper sukkah is kosher, but the sukkah on the bottom is not kosher. Why the sukkah on the bottom is not kosher? Because the sukkah on the bottom, it's a schach under schach. Right? It's schach under schach, even though the both schach kasher, but it's schach under schach and it's pasul. The Gemara talks about it. And it's a long discussion, brings 4 different ways how to deal with it. But the Bavli in Sukkah, Tanu Rabbanan, בסוכות תשבו, ולא סוכה תחת הסוכה, ולא בסוכה שתחת האילן, ולא בסוכה שתחת הבית. אמר רבי ירמיה, sometimes they're both kosher, sometimes both pasul, sometimes the bottom one is kosher and the upper one is pasul, and sometimes the opposite. When is both pasul? דתרווה יוצילתן מרובה לחמתן, both of them, the schach is a kosher schach, meaning more tzel than chama, more shade than sun, which is a kosher schach. V'kaima elyona lemala me-20 amma. The elyona, the upper schach, is more than 20 amma above the schach of the bottom sukkah. Again, let's explain. We have a sukkah under a sukkah. The sukkah on the bottom has a kosher schach, but above it, a lot above it, more than 10 meters above it, there's another kosher schach. So the Gemara says, here, both sukkot are pasul. Wait, the upper sukkah is pasul. Why? Because the schach of the upper sukkah is more than 20 amma from the bottom of the upper sukkah, which is pasul. And the bottom sukkah is pasul. Why? because it's a schach under schach, and we said schach under schach is pasul. But wait, the Gemara says that the bottom one is pasul. But what did we say? There's more than 20 amah between the bottom schach and the upper schach, right? So for me, what do we say? Even if you have a kosher sukkah, a schach, but more than 20 amah above it, you have a kosher schach, it still makes the bottom one pasul. So according to this, how does Rav Tzion Levi says what he says? Because the Gemara says here that even if you have the schach above 20 amah, it does reflect, it does make the sukkah under it pasul. So according to this Gemara, you're not allowed to do sukkah tachat sukkah. Sukkah tachat sukkah. And this trick of if the porch is more than 20 amah is not valid. That's what's probably in the Gemara. So there's a discussion about it. Let's skip to the end. There was two rabbis in Mea Shearim, I think, that learned this biyud. There's much more, of course. And one rabbi thought you're allowed to build such a sukkah, and the other rabbi thought that you're not allowed. Okay, let's ask. Who should we ask? The one said, I'll ask Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. And the other one said, let's ask Rav Vosner. The one that thought it's kosher, he went to Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, and he said, can I build a sukkah? There, they asked about a sukkah that there's a tree, but the tree is more than 10 meters above. Meaning, there's a tall tree, more than 10 meters, and you want to build under it a sukkah. Are you allowed or not? It's the same question as the Mirpeset, right? It's the same question. So the one, he went to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, and he said about the tree and about the buildings. And Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach answered, of course it's kosher. He said, what? Yes, of course it's kosher. But Rav Shlomo Zalman, nobody wrote it. Nobody wrote such a thing that if you build and you have a building above you more than 20 amah, it's kosher. So Rav Shlomo Zalman, that's what he wrote here in the book. He smiled and said, of course they didn't write it. Why not? There wasn't such a situation. You didn't have such a practical situation that you will build, and more than 10 meters above it, you would have a ceiling or a roof or something. That's why, but it's kosher. So the other rabbi that thought it's not kosher went to Rav Vosner, and Rav Vosner wrote, it's pasul. It's not kosher. Okay, afterwards they went to Rav Eliashiv. Rav Eliashiv, an avrech that didn't have a place to build a sukkah, only under a tree that was more than 20 amah, and he asked him if he can build it or not. So Rav Eliashiv said, yes, you're allowed to build it. It's kosher. But then it's just a minute. Where do you live? You know what? Ask one of the rabbis in your neighborhood to check and make sure this tree is really more than 10 meters. Because maybe it's less than 10 meters. So that avrech went to the rabbi in that neighborhood, and the rabbi in the neighborhood said, listen, the tree is more than 20 meters, but I think it's pasul. And he brought this Gemara in Sukkah Daf Tet. And that rabbi went to Rav Eliashiv and just said, you're right, I think it's pasul. So that's the story. I have here Emek HaTshuva. Rav Yechezkel Rata Mikarelsberg wrote in Sukkot Tafshin Mem Gimel 1983 about the trees. If you can build a sukkah under a tree, that the tree is more than 20 amah. And he said, yes, but because it's something new and I didn't see other rabbis dealing with it, I think it's kosher, but I'm waiting for other rabbis to agree with me. And he wrote 3 tshuvot explaining why he thinks it's kosher. So that's what he wrote. So we have to finish. So I think this solution of Sukkah and the Mirpeset is 20 Amma is a solution that should be talked about. Rabbis should discuss it. If so, we're talking about 4 floors, meaning if you would build a building according to the Psak of Shlomo Zalman, so we'd have like a Mirpeset here, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 5th floor, the Mirpeset can be above the 1st floor. You need at least 4 floors in between because each floor today is around 2.5 meters, something like that. Maybe 3 or 4 floors. And then if it's kosher, I see in my mind another 50 years, you come to a building with the 50, 60 floors, and you have, yes, they say, okay, I'm a religious person. They said, okay, we have 3 solutions. You have not kosher sukkah, meaning just a porch with something above it, not kosher sukkah. You have a mehadrin sukkah, which will be a real mirpeset sukkah like today. You would have a mehadrin liberal sukkah for you, for Jack. A liberal sukkah that everything, the whole mirpeset is open. And you have I would say, which would be more expensive. You have a mehadrin chauvinist, I don't know, the conservative sukkah, which you have only 1 meter and 2 meters, enough for 3 people. And you would have rabbanut sukkah. Rabbanut, not mehadrin, rabbanut sukkah with what? That it's a sukkah, but you have a porch 4 floors above it. Now, according to Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, it's kosher. So then, and of course, the price would be higher the more mehadrin you want. And I gave this in my community in Petach Tikva. He said, no, Rabbi, you don't understand. You will have 1 mirpeset that some of it will be open, some of it would be, for some of the sukkah would be mehadrin, some would be rabbanut, and some would be pasul. So that's something interesting. I think it's an interesting halachic issue. And you can see through the halachic discussion, as we saw even here among us, different approaches how to deal with halakha, with things that are changing, and as well with topics connected to women, not obligated mitzvot, how feelings, etc., which is even a different question, but it comes together. Questions?
Go. Go.
I'd like to say something.
Yes.
The very fact that the subject is being raised for discussion is good. I don't know what the solution is, but the fact is that it's an issue that it really concerns everybody who's interested in religion and wants to do what's right. And the fact that the rabbis have different opinions is also good. But I want to congratulate you on talking about it because it's the first sensible conversation I've heard in a long time.
Go. Go. Yes.
Thank you very much. Any more comments, questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.